Well, that worked, didn't it? Welcome to Fear Factor, everybody. Come on in. We're trying to put dates on this. What day is it, Anne Tapia? It is
March
Tuesday, March
26th.
26th, and we are here for Fear Factor. And we are going to be talking today about reporting requirements. So we're going to give it a couple minutes while everybody shuffles in our virtual doors. And welcome, welcome, welcome. Come on in. It's good to see. Anybody got some good dad jokes? Nate, you got a good dad joke while everybody's coming in? He's like, I'm not a dad, Lisa.
I don't have any children, so I wouldn't know where to start.
How about just a dumb joke?
Oh, oh God.
I'm just kidding.
I'm
You don't.
funny, but I'm terrible about being funny on the spot.
You are funny. I will give you that one. Oh my goodness. Well, Paul Dosick says hi to everyone and Billy Joe. So thanks. While you guys are shuffling in, we already have about 170 people. Isn't that crazy how quickly we can get people in here? For those of you that are here, what do I have to say? So chat box is open just for comments, for saying hi to the hosts and panelists. Anytime we have a comment you want to make in the session, feel free to put it in the chat box. If you have a specific question that you want the whole audience to hear, see, and get answered by the panelists, please put that in the Q&A. That Q&A you will find in the middle of your screen on the bottom. It says Q&A. It's more to the right-hand side. That is your best place to get an answer. As you're looking at the Q&A, if you click on it, you will have the option to upvote somebody else's question. So if you open it up and you see the exact same question that you were going to ask, or something very similar, or just a really good question, give it a thumbs up. And then that will put it at the top so that we can know what questions are the most interesting to all of you. There will be some questions that might be answered by our panelists during the session. So if you all of a sudden don't see your question anymore, look in the answered sections. We may have an answer there for you. If you put something that's really more of a chat or a comment in there, I will move it to dismissed, nothing personal. That's just to get rid of it so that we can focus on the most pertinent questions. What else do we need to talk about today, Anne? We got 211 people here and so many highs. I love it.
I think you covered the logistics.
If you're claiming continuing professional development units for SSAs, which is what was applied for in this, just as long as you checked in right away and on the email that you registered for in Member Connect, then you will be automatically checked in and you will receive an email in a couple days saying that you can claim your CPDUs. If you have any questions about that, you can email training@oacbdd.org or myself. Oh, look at Michelle's already got questions in here. They're asking us questions before we even open our mouths. Wow. We'll keep you guys busy. Thanks, Michelle. And she's doing a good job of showing what a question might look like in the Q&A. And then you can see right there, boy, I really like that. I just upvoted it. I gave it a thumbs up. So thanks, Michelle, for that question. As far as the PowerPoint, the number one question that everybody always asks is, are we going to get the PowerPoint? And the answer is 100%. I promise you will be able to get the PowerPoint. Anne will be dropping it in the chat box once we get most of the people checked in. And then we'll also drop it in one more time at the end of the session. And then if you miss both those opportunities, it will also be posted on OACB Member Connect. And it will also eventually be posted on the Employment First website, I believe. Is that where it is, Anne?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So lots of opportunities. And if you really can't find any of those things, you can always reach out to me, Lisa Combs, and I will get it to you. So, all right. Well, on that note, I think we are pretty good. We're going to go ahead. We have about 228 people. I always like to know for the people. I know you guys that are tuning in. Remember, we cannot see you or hear you. We can only read your chats or your questions. But currently we have about 230 people in the room, and we have representation from amazing counties out there. Just looking around, I see all kinds of great counties. So we're going to do some polls and things like that, but I'm going to let Anne kick it off.
All right, welcome everyone. I am Anne Tapia. I'm with the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities in the Community Life Engagement team, and I support the Southwest Ohio region. So our plan for today in our Fear Factor episode, we're going to start off with the introductions and just kind of housekeeping things that we are kicking off right now. Then we'll dive right into our overview of reporting requirements to maintain benefits programs. And we'll wrap up with some Q&A and next steps and an additional poll to find out what else you all want us to talk about in the next episode. So let's get to it. With our very first poll, we want to know who is here today. Lisa is launching that. Your options are going to include an service and support administrator, other county board staff that's not an SSA, family member, self-advocate, provider, opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities staff, OOD, or DODD, the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities.
All right. Good job. We're getting lots of people in. While you guys are finishing up this poll, if there's anybody watching Christine had come up with an amazing idea of group watches for this reporting requirements, at maybe even like provider, day services, vocabs, things like that. If anybody's doing that, please put it in the chat box. We want to know if you did that. We think that's an awesome idea. And if you didn't get it going for this time, you could watch the recording sometime and do it instead. That would be really fun. All right. Well, I'm going to close the poll. We've got share results back out. We've got 80% of the people on the call today are service and support administrators. So thank you very much. We really value our service and support administrators and want you to have as much information as possible to help people out there in Ohio. We also have 16% are other county board staff. So lots of great people. We have a family member in the crowd today. Thank you for being here, family member. We have a couple self-advocates on our panel, but not in the crowd, it looks like. And we have 2 providers. Yay, providers, glad you're here. We have 2% or 4 people from OOD, along with our panelists who are from OOD. And then we also have 1 person from the Department of DD. So thanks so much for being here. That's our first poll.
And that wasn't me, because I couldn't.
Yeah, I know. With the panelists, we're not allowed to. So we're out.
All right, so fear factor. Fear factor stands for facts, evaluate, action, results. And the hope is that as we demystify some of the myths that are out there about working, that you come to these episodes, you learn some facts, you figure out what really works for you, and you take some action and you get to a job. So our hope behind all of these episodes is that we're giving you those resources, no matter who you are coming to this episode, so that we can face those fears and see people getting benefits and working in a role that you love. So past episodes, we have a whopping 8 episodes so far covering Social Security, Social Security income and Social Security for disability income, Medicaid, Ticket to Work, Medicaid buy-in for workers with disabilities. And all of those resources have been compiled into a Fear Factor working document. And that is linked on this and can also be found on the Employment First episode. And we want to give a big shout out to all of you all who come, our faithful episode watchers who watch these and plug in on a repeat basis. If you have missed episodes in the past, we do want to remind you, you can watch past episodes that are on the Employment First website. And just a reminder that this episode focused on maintaining benefits is because you all told us this was an important topic for you to learn more about. Wanted to highlight a couple of the episodes that most recently were done. We had a Medicaid buy-in for workers with disabilities that was done back in June of 2023. And then just last month, we had an SSDI versus SSI, going back to the basics, and that was back in February. And to binge watch those episodes, you can click the link that's here. It's on the Employment First website as well.
Did you say binge watch, Anne?
I said binge watch, yeah.
Can you imagine, like, let's all drink, our beverage of choice on Friday night and watch Fear Factor sessions.
That's not what you're doing?
I don't know. I'm going to make sure that I watch the most current ones, by the way.
Yes.
One of the things we've been working on is clearing out, if you see some changes and maybe one's gone, the reason why we might take one off is because we've updated it, because this is information that changes all the time. So if you're binge watching, try to make sure you watch the most current ones.
Fair point. And watch for those to change. We're just going to keep you guys on your toes in terms of what you can actually have access to when you binge watch. We just want to make sure you have all the right information.
Oh,
All right, poll number 2.
All right, next poll. Let's see. I'm going to share that one out. And we got, what do you know so far, right? Our knowledge check. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that one. So how much do you know right now about reporting requirements prior to today? Are you brave like me and say, what? You're supposed to report something? You know, I have no idea. Oh gosh, that's why I make sure my son is not on anything that's too hard, because I don't know how to report. Or you know a little bit about it, but not specifics, knowledgeable. And then of course, if there's anybody out there that would like to present on this, Paula and Latosha are happy to have a cohort and another person to refer people to. So don't feel bad if you're an expert, let us know. All right. We got, let's see, we got 77%. I'm going to get a few more people in there. And then I will end the poll. 80%. Oh, good. You guys are all answering those. Good. All right. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, share those results, see what our crowd looks like. All right, so luckily we only have a few people like myself. Only 4% of the people have never even heard that you need to report. Thank goodness. That's why I got out of SSA work and into advising SSAs. But we do have 57% who still really would like to know more, understand. They really don't understand what exactly needs to be reported and who to report it to. And then we have about 40% that are consider themselves fairly knowledgeable, but can always learn a little more. And Paula and Latosha, job security, man. Nobody had the guts to say they were an expert on it. So you're it for now. That's it. You'll be our presenters now. All right. So thanks for sharing that. Hopefully you guys will all be able to move yourselves up a step next time at the end of this. So
Today's episode, we are lucky to have Paula Washek, who is a benefits and supports specialist at Clearwater Council of Government, and Latosha Olinger, who's work incentives coordinator at the Warren County Board of Developmental Disabilities, and Christine Brown, who will also be reporting out. She's a clinical research assistant, self-advocate faculty at the Ohio State Nisonger Center.
And I think Nisonger is in the crowd. They already put in the comments. They are representing. Yay. Thanks for coming in, Nisonger.
Love it. All right. And we cannot move forward without acknowledging our amazing behind the scenes production team. So many of them are on screen today. Elizabeth Reisner, who, oh, I need to update that slide, don't I? I'm so sorry. Elizabeth is with the Butler County Board of Developmental Disabilities in a new role, SSA supervisor. Christine Brown gets double shout out, also on the production team. Nate Turner, who is the advocacy policy specialist at the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities. Tanya is not on today with Chili's, Creation. I do that every time. Childs. It's just so you can correct me, Christine. Thank you. Dean Childs with Childs Creations. And Dorinda Gear, who is in her new role as a certified work incentive transitioning youth practitioner with DBS Consulting. And Jeannie Emke with work incentives consultant, who is a work incentives consultant with opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities.
Elizabeth, I don't think I took note that you moved to SSA supervisor. Oh my goodness, that is crazy. Congratulations on that. And I really do want the whole crowd to realize Dorinda Gear is, you know, if you have the ability to give her a clap or a happy congratulations, she retired just gosh, 2 weeks ago or so from Fairfield County, and is now has her own consulting business. And she is staying committed to the Fear Factor group, which we are so thankful for, and all your work that you've done for county boards. Thank you, Dorinda.
Oh, that is our last one. Let me stop screen sharing and we will pass it over to our superstars for today.
All right, so Latosha and Paula are going to stay on. The rest of us are going to be quiet for a hot minute, and we'll see you guys all soon.
Thank you so much, Lisa and Anne. My name is Paula. I'm thrilled to be here with my friend Latosha down from Warren County. And of course, Christine as well. So today we are going to talk about some super, super exciting information. We're going to talk about what needs to be reported to Social Security and Job and Family Services. So we're going to go through a very quick review of the benefit programs. Because if you were on last month, we did talk about the SSDI versus SSI pretty in depth. So we're going to run through that real quick. And then some other programs that are available through Job and Family Services. And then we're going to talk about what needs to be reported for specific benefit programs. And then also how to report. Like, it's okay to know what to report, but we also need to know how to do that. So basically, long story short, what needs to be reported? Everything, literally everything, especially if you're on one of those needs-based programs that are out there. People always ask me, what do I need to tell them? Well, basically, you have to tell them everything about your entire life story, or basically things that you own, things you have, especially when you're getting a benefit based on need. So here we have the Social Security programs. Social Security, I don't know if many of you know, pay benefits through two separate disability programs. So the first one is called the SSDI or Title II program, and that's paid to individuals who have worked and paid into Social Security and have enough credits to draw a benefit through that program. And also, a lot of the individuals that we serve with county boards are actually drawing benefits through a parent work record, because if somebody meets Social Security's rules for disability before the age of 22, they can draw from a parent work record as well. That is called a childhood disability benefit. Previously, it was called a disabled adult child benefit. And then the other program, which is more common, I feel like, is the Supplemental Security Income Program. People just seem to know more about this program. It is paid to anyone who does not have a work record to draw from, and it can be paid to adults and children who have a disability and have limited income and resources. So what are the differences? I know last month we liked the side-by-side, so I put together another side-by-side of what the differences are between these programs. So with the SSI, it is a needs-based program. You have to meet that resource limit to be eligible. And for an individual, that is $2,000. And for a couple who receives SSI, that is $3,000. Also, like if you're working with a family who maybe has a child who is getting benefits, this resource limit would be $3,000 for the parents and then $2,000 for the child. If there's only one parent in the home, it's $2,000 for the one parent and then $2,000 for the child. So when you're on SSI, they look at monthly income. It is every single month, Social Security needs to know what the income looked like for that individual or household to determine what that check amount is going to be. And then with SSI in the state of Ohio, you automatically become eligible for SSI Medicaid. For this year on SSI, the maximum benefit rate for an individual is $943 per month. And then for a couple, a married couple who gets SSI, they receive $1,415 per month as a married SSI couple. And then with SSI, the check is always deposited at least on the first of the month. Sometimes if the first falls on a holiday or on a weekend, they might deposit those checks early. For some people as well, they get checks early through early access through their banks. So if someone says, oh, I got paid on the 29th, then that might be that they're getting that SSI benefit. So that's the SSI program. And then over here, we have the SSDI and Childhood Disability Benefit Program. And again, this is an insurance program. So it comes from money that was paid into Social Security. So someone is working and paying through FICA taxes into Social Security. And there is not actually a resource limit for these SSDI and Childhood Disability Benefit programs. In the land of Social Security, they do not count resources for this program. So I know in the chat earlier, there was a question about the SSAs and how are you supposed to know what somebody's resource limit is? And I would say like the best thing that you could do as an SSA is to figure out or try to figure out what program somebody is receiving benefits through, if it's SSDI or SSI. And then with the SSDI, it starts Medicare 2 years after they become eligible. So that's another telltale sign that somebody's getting this benefit through a work record is if they tell you they have Medicare, they're probably getting an SSDI or childhood disability benefit. That's where it came from. And then with the SSDI and childhood disability benefits, work income may cause the check to go away if it's over like the pretty high limits that are set for this program, but it's not like SSI where, you know, the more money you make on SSI, the lower your check goes. They just either get their entire check for SSDI, or if they're over the limits, they might not get any check at all. And then for SSDI and these childhood disability benefits, these benefit amounts, they change for everybody. They depend on how much was paid in to Social Security and how many people are drawing off of the benefit. And we get this a lot when it comes to those child benefits. So the children drawing these benefits through a parent are collecting what's called a dependent benefit. And so it's all separated based on how many children or other dependents there are collecting it. And then with these SSDI benefits, they usually arrive on the 3rd of the month. Sometimes I'll run into someone who still gets them on a random Wednesday during the month, but usually they're getting deposited on the 3rd as opposed to the 1st with SSI. And then I think last month we had chatted just real quick about how to tell the difference. So as an SSA, if somebody doesn't know what benefit they're getting, you guys could easily just ask them, you know, let me see one of your letters from Social Security, because this is what the top left-hand side of the letters look like for these different benefit programs. This top one, it'll say retirement survivors and disability insurance if somebody's getting an SSDI or a childhood disability benefit. And then this one says supplemental security income for those SSI benefits. So that is the easiest, quickest way to tell. Also, though, you run into folks all the time who actually get both. And that just makes things so much more fun because it's all the different benefit lands together. So at the beginning, I said, you know, what needs to be reported? And for needs-based programs, they literally should be telling a lot of information to these agencies. And so here are the needs-based programs that we're kind of going to focus more so on today. And that is for Social Security, that supplemental security income program is the needs-based program through Social Security. And Job and Family Services, they house Medicaid food stamps, which are called Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program or SNAP benefits. And then there's also what's called an Ohio Work First benefit, and that's Ohio's version of Temporary Assistance for Needy Families or TANF benefits. So those are all needs-based programs. And then there's also the local housing authority that manages the subsidized housing. And so we're going to go through each one of these different agencies and how to kind of get information to them and what needs to get to them. So who needs to be reporting information to Social Security? Ultimately, if there is a representative payee, it is the representative payee's responsibility. The tricky thing, though, is I have found in my experiences, a lot of times individuals aren't getting information to the representative payee to report. So if there is a representative payee, they can only report what they know. So if they don't know someone is working, if they don't know someone, you know, had some money coming in that month, then they can't report it. So if you're a representative payee or if you're working with someone who has a representative payee, make sure information is relayed to them because ultimately it is their job if there is one. And if there's an individual who is their own payee, it is their job to report information to Social Security. And I think the biggest thing I want everybody to remember about who needs to report information is don't assume someone else is reporting. So I've run into a lot of, places that are maybe vocabs and they send in pay stubs every month to Social Security. And just know, like, they don't have to do that. That is not their job. It's ultimately the individual's job. I think a lot of places are doing it to be helpful. But I have run into situations where these agencies maybe aren't getting the pay stubs to the right person at the Social Security office. And it sometimes gets a little tricky. Or the vocab reports income and the individual reports income, and then it's double reported, and that can lead to some issues as well. So I think it's important to have conversations, as a team to figure out who is going to report for this individual and how it's going to be reported. So I copied this right out of a letter from Social Security for SSI, because every single letter that comes out for the SSI program has this embedded into it. So this is their way to tell people this is what needs to be reported. So it says, at the top of the letter, everything needs to be reported no later than 10 days after the change happens. And they give you this wonderful 1-800 number. I'm going to tell you that I don't really like this 1-800 number. It's really hard to get a person quickly on that phone number. And we're going to have some hints later to how to contact your local Social Security office directly. But this is a last resort. At the end of the day, if you don't know who to call this number for SSI. But this lists everything basically that needs to be reported. So if you start or stop a job, if your bank account balance goes over $2,000, they want people to say, hey, I have too much money. I'm not eligible. I don't think anybody's ever done that, but it's in here. You're supposed to tell them if you have more than $2,000.
That's only if it's you're on SSI, not SSDI.
Correct.
Just
yes.
to say to everybody, because somebody might say, is this for SSI and SSDI all? Or is this only for SSI? And it's only for SSI.
Some of this actually does apply to SSI or SSDI as well. But you're right, Christine, that $2,000 resource limit is for SSI. And this came directly from an SSI letter. So this is for SSI that we're kind of focusing on. The big one here, bullet point number 3, if you move. I don't know how many times people just forget to call Social Security if they moved. And what would happen is if you move and Social Security tries to send you mail and it comes back to them, they stop paying you. And they just kind of hold your benefit until they figure out where you went. Some of the other ones, anyone moves in or out of your household, if someone passes away, if you get married, because, then those couple rules apply. Anything changes, if your medical condition improves, you're supposed to tell them if you might not any longer be medically eligible for Social Security. This one's a big one for students. Under the age of 22, there's a huge student earned income exclusion, which we're going to talk about how to report this. But if you start or stop school, that is a really big benefit for folks who are getting SSI and still in school. And then if you leave the United States for 30 days or more, if you're in hospital, jail, or other institution, and then if you get arrested, or if you have a felony or a warrant for you, you're supposed to tell them. So this is right from their letter. So eligibility for SSI, which, we've talked about this a lot previously, but I did just want to kind of go through it again. It's dependent on what the household looks like for a child. And what they do for a child is they do this process called deeming. And they look at, household parent income, and they look at how many other kids are in the home, and they don't count all the income for other children in the home. So that's a tricky process for the children receiving SSI benefits, but it's also why it's so important to make sure that the family is reporting household income. When somebody turns 18, once they hit that age 18, they'll only look at that individual's resources and income, even if they're still living in the home with their parents. And then married couples' income and resources of a spouse count if you're living together. If you're married but separated and living separately, they actually don't count the income of your spouse. Resources might count if you still have like a joint bank account, but it's definitely not counting that income if you're living separately. And then Social Security has this fun rule called holding out. They say if you're presenting yourself to the public as though you are married, then you're considered a couple. And that gets really tricky for some folks. We have a lot of people that we work with who maybe want to change their last name on Facebook because they really like their boyfriend at the time. Or, they just refer to each other as husband and wife, even though they're not really married. So if you know that person is getting SSI benefits, make sure that maybe you have a conversation and say they need to potentially be careful about how they're presenting themselves to the public, because Social Security does have this rule saying they could consider them a married couple if they're holding out for each other. And then income for SSI is looked at as unearned income and earned income. And I put on here a huge list just of unearned income that I have seen. And all of this stuff needs to be reported. So I have seen living arrangement is something we're going to dive way deeper into in just a moment. But SSDI and childhood disability benefits count as unearned income. And I've actually seen Social Security screw this one up. It's hard to believe, but they work out of two separate systems in the Social Security office. And sometimes the SSI folks don't see that they're actually getting an SSDI benefit. So make sure that Social Security representatives know if you're getting that benefit. And it sounds stupid to even say that out loud, but they don't always catch that. And then I see letters later saying, hey, we overpaid you. And it was because of a calculation error. Maybe they didn't factor in that benefit. Child support. Child support's a huge one that I see for children getting SSI benefits, and it needs to be reported. And I will say that I've actually seen child support reporting go in the favor of the families that I work with, because it sometimes creates an underpayment where people get underpaid because they're not actually getting the child support that Social Security thinks they're getting. And then unemployment benefits, veteran benefits, Ohio Works First, adoption subsidies, lottery winnings. If you have an SSI person and they come to you saying, I won $500 on a scratch off ticket, they better tell Social Security about it because it counts as unearned income that month. Inheritance. If somebody receives an inheritance, it counts as income and it counts as unearned income. And income always counts in the month it is received. And then monetary gifts. If somebody gets $100 for Christmas from their aunt, technically, if they're on SSI, it needs to be reported. I will say the way around that is a stable account, which I know Nate is going to be presenting on in a couple months. So we'll save that for another day. And then the earned income, that's the wages that somebody's getting from their actual employment. Or I've seen a lot of self-employment out there lately, people who are drivers for Uber, drivers for Lyft, that's considered gig work, which is self-employment. So that stuff all needs to be reported. And then SSI has this fun rule about living arrangements. And I have seen this really kind of cause a lot of problems for people. This is the rule right out of their rule book. But they're allowed to count what somebody receives as unearned income, according to them, in the form of food and shelter. The one I see most is this one. The value of 1/3 reduction happens a lot of times if somebody's not paying anything for their food and shelter. And once someone turns 18, it is expected that they pay for their own food and shelter. There's also some really weird rules out there for a child who's expected to pay for their own food and shelter if they're living with someone other than parents. So that might apply to a child as well. But they basically divide the SSI benefit. They chop off 1/3 and say, you're not paying for your food and shelter. We're going to give you less money until it can be fixed. So here's the rules with SSI living arrangement is a child receiving SSI living with parents. We actually have to show that that family is paying for their own living expenses. If the family, for some reason, is living in a home, maybe owned by somebody they know and not paying rent, they'll get less money. They basically just need to prove to Social Security they're paying for all their own food, shelter. And then again, like I just mentioned, if a child SSI recipient is living with someone other than a parent, so maybe they have a grandma who is a legal custodian, then that child actually has to show that they're paying for their living expenses for living in that home. And it gets super weird for when I'm working with people because they're like, what? I have to collect rent from them? They're 4. Like 4-year-olds don't pay rent, but according to Social Security, they should be paying for their share of expenses when they're living with someone other than a parent. And then age 18. So this is a very tricky one because everyone who's on SSI is a child gets redetermined once they turn 18. In reality, it happens usually between their 18th and 19th birthdays. And so sometimes these age 18 redetermination decisions don't come out until closer to 19. But what is going to happen is Social Security, if they're found eligible as an adult, they go back to when they turned 18 and look at that living arrangement. So when I work with families, I always say, once they turn 18, we want some sort of documentation showing they're going to pay for their living expenses, because if not, then it could cause an overpayment. And it does get a little tricky. So Social Security might say, we paid you too much because you weren't paying for your living expenses back to your 18th birthday. And then basically at the end of the day, someone on SSI must be paying for all their own living expenses to be eligible for that maximum benefit, which for this year is $943. It's just really important. And I think that people really underestimate this living arrangement, which is why, that's part of the reporting requirements. You have to tell Social Security if you move, because what's going to happen is they're going to want a copy of your rental agreement. They're going to want to know, like, when you moved, are you paying for all your own stuff? Those kind of things. So this is what I use. This is literally just a form I created, and I find it quite helpful because what Social Security usually does is they say, well, what are the household living expenses for the home you're living in? And I use this form when I'm working with 18-year-old parents who don't really want to charge their 18-year-old rent, but we should be charging them for what their share of the household is if they want to get that maximum SSI benefit. So I use this chart just to kind of figure out, like with the family, how much is the rent or mortgage for where you're living? What is your electric bill usually range? And then the water, sewer, so on. And food is a big one. That is actually included in this living arrangement. The only reason it wouldn't be included is if that person was receiving food stamps and already purchasing their own food. But what you do is you add up all these columns for the household living expenses, and then you divide by how many people are in the household to get, what that person's share is going to be. And then what I usually do is I use this number to create a written rental agreement. So I just have the family sign this, and the individual can sign as the tenant if they're their own guardian usually. I have run into some issues if the individual's not their own guardian, they legally cannot sign a document. That's why I a lot of times will include both of these documents together, just because then we can show this is why they're paying this, and this is the rental agreement. So also factoring into this living situation is a temporary living situation. And so something it's weird because I've gotten emails about jail lately, like people have been saying, what happens if someone goes to jail? So the rule is if you spend 30 consecutive days in jail, then you're not entitled to your benefit. And, I'm not asking someone to use their one phone call from jail to call Social Security. I know that's unreasonable, but I'm saying like somebody should be notifying Social Security if you go to jail, because it could impact your benefit. And then it could create like an not so great financial situation when you come out if you're like getting that benefit while you're in there, and then they want to collect all that money back. And then what happens if somebody's on SSI and they're in jail for 12 continuous months is their benefit actually gets terminated. So they would have to reapply if they were in there for longer than that. And then there's a rule about hospitalization and nursing care. So if Medicaid's paying for more than half their cost of care, then the SSI recipient is actually only entitled to $30 per month for a personal needs allowance when they're in this sort of situation. But there is a special rule actually that Social Security has, and a special form that can be filled out if somebody is in a medical facility for less than 90 days and they actually need those funds from Social Security to keep that living arrangement for when they come out and get discharged. So there's the form. So there's Social Security website. You can look up forms on their website, which I have a link later in the resources slide. But this is the form number. SSA 186 is the form that they would need completed, I believe, from the physician treating them. And then the last one for this temporary living arrangement is if they go out of the country for 30 days in a row. then technically they're not entitled to the SSI benefit. So this is why, it's really important to look at that living arrangement on a monthly basis. And that's something like I said, I see it get overlooked so many times for people on SSI. It is so important. So the other thing, income. Yes, apparently income will affect your monthly SSI check, but there's this fun thing that Social Security likes to do where they like to guess how much income somebody's getting. And they do this because they don't want to have these overpayments that happen. So if Social Security thinks income is received, or somebody at some point put income into the system and they didn't put an end date in there, then this estimate shows up on the Social Security SSI record. And it's for everything, all kinds of income. I've seen it in there for a living arrangement. If Social Security doesn't think you're getting or paying for your own living expenses, then they'll put this estimate in there for unearned income and living arrangement. Child support, again, that's the big one that I've seen, is if Social Security knows there's an order and somebody's going to get $600 a month in child support, but they're not getting it, they don't take that estimate off until you submit proof that you are not getting that child support every month. The other one I've seen is that Ohio Works First benefit, the TANF benefit for needy families with children. If you get SSI and you have Ohio Works First, your SSI benefit is decreased by whatever your Ohio Works First benefit is. And a lot of times that stops. The Ohio Works First will stop when somebody gets SSI, but SSI won't fix it until they see proof. So the letter from JFS showing that it stopped. And then earned income, these estimates, I've just run into so many folks, especially in the younger population, where we have these kids doing these work experiences that are only 6 weeks. They do a work experience and they send income in. And a lot of times, actually, it's excluded because they're still a student. But those estimates stay on the record for sometimes years. I've seen them on there because nobody ever told them that it stopped. And it was only six weeks. So make sure, if you're working with families and you don't think they're getting what they should be getting in SSI, then talk to them about it. Say, hey, have you submitted information? The best way to submit income is just sending copies of those pay stubs. And we're going to look at a video in a little bit about that. So in my wonderful experiences up here at the COG, I have had a lot of experiences with underpayments, which is it's actually a great thing when I discover them, because families are like, what do you mean I've been underpaid? But this is why, you always kind of hear the other side of people get letters and they say they owe back a lot of money to Social Security, and those are never fun, but we deal with them and we try to make it right. But these are examples that I've run into of underpayments where people aren't actually getting enough money. And it's because this information wasn't sent in to Social Security. So child support, again, if there's an order for it, Social Security counts it. So if you're working with a family who has a child on SSI, and that family is not getting all the child support they should be getting, make sure every single month they're sending in proof of their child support. In the child support portal for Ohio, there's a way to create a payment history report that'll literally show every single payment they've ever received. And so that's what I usually get to show to Social Security, that this family isn't getting what they're supposed to be getting. But on the first of the month, you have to send that in, definitely by the 6th of the month. And again, that Ohio Works First benefit, this should stop when SSI starts. JFS gets notified of usually the SSI starting, and the SSI will not go up though until that official JFS letter is sent to Social Security. So again, if you're working with families who have children and they're getting this benefit, make sure they're sending that information to Social Security. I think a lot of people out there just assume JFS talks to Social Security, and in some ways their systems do, but not quickly and not usually in the favor of an individual getting benefits. It's a lot of times it's like, oh, whoops, they were overpaid, but this would be an underpayment. And then employment ending. if you are working with someone and you know their employment stopped, tell Social Security, call them, send them that pay stub. And I always tell people, write last pay stub on that pay stub, because then it'll signal to the workers, oh, this job ended. We need to take out that estimate in the system. So sometimes it can be like something as simple as that, just writing extra information on those pay stubs. And again, the other side of this is when a job starts, right? First pay stub on the top of that one. So they know like this is a new job. At the end of the day, sometimes I just have people write statements too of what's going on in their lives and send that to Social Security as well. And then just quickly to go through the resources. So this is information that needs to be reported to Social Security. Some people I have found actually own resources that they're not really aware of, and that they don't know it counts towards the limit. But it's important, I think, for them to know, because it could create a lot of issues down the road. So, if somebody has a stash of cash at home, technically they're supposed to say, Social Security, I have money hidden under my bed. Nobody has ever said that, but it should be reported. Bank accounts, checking, savings account. Actually, you need to tell Social Security if you have a stable account, because they just need to verify it is a stable account. So a lot of families get confused about that they think, well, it doesn't count. I don't need to tell you about it. But you should tell them about it, because it might show up in their records. Social Security runs financial checks. And so if it shows up and you reported that it is an actual stable account, then Social Security will know, okay, that was a stable account. We don't count that one. So it's important just to share that information with them. 401ks from previous employers. So these actually count towards the resource limit. And I've run into several folks lately who have these just kind of sitting around, and they don't know that they're still out there, but they do technically count. So if your previous employer had a 401k and you didn't do anything with it when you broke off that employment, then it's a resource. You technically could access it. So what they count is whatever you could access minus whatever the penalty was for accessing it. So a lot of times it's good, if they're working for a new employer and have a 401k, which they can do that. They can have a 401k through a current employer. Roll the old one into the new one, or tuck it in a stable account, cash it out, pay the penalty, put it in a stable account. Items with a title: cars, boats, RVs, motorcycles, trailers. Anything with a title needs to be reported. Stocks, savings, bonds, CDs, certificates of deposits, anything of value basically needs to be reported for SSI. The best way to report it: send copies of bank statements, send copies of the stock and what the value is, send copies of the savings bonds. Just send a copy, photocopy it. I've had people take a picture of it. Just send whatever you need to show that you have it. And then in the opposite side of that, show that you got rid of it. Like if you're getting rid of a 401k through a previous employer and you're selling it, it would probably impact benefits for a little bit, but then we just need to show we put that in a stable account. It is now safe. So we just have to show proof, show them where it went. Here's a list of some things that don't actually count for SSI. You do still need to tell Social Security about it, but in here, there's a couple of things that actually really benefit the individual. So someone can own one vehicle. A family can own one vehicle that they use for transportation. Anything outside of that counts as a resource. House that you live in, you can own the house that you live in. If you own multiple houses, they need to know about that, because that second house would count. Federal tax refunds. So these are really important for people who are getting SSI, because I've seen folks who get kicked off of SSI because they're counting them as a resource and as income, and it shouldn't be. So federal tax refunds don't count as income or a resource until 12 months after they're received. So if a family gets a very large tax refund and it's sitting in their bank account for several months, Social Security should know that that's a tax refund. So a lot of times I just tell them, make sure you tell them, send them a copy of, the deposit when it went into your bank, just so they know this money is a tax refund and it's not supposed to count. Social Security back payments, those technically don't count as income or a resource for 9 months after received. And usually Social Security catches these and knows like that might be why someone's over this resource limit, but they don't always. So we would just need to send the letter back to them saying, this is why I have so much money in my account, and just report that if it does become an issue. I'm not saying everyone has to just say, oh, I have this extra money because this is why. But if you get a letter saying you were over the limits and this is why, send them proof that that is why. And then those stable account funds don't count up to $100,000 for SSI, and a 401k from a previous or from a current employer does not count. So this is one of my favorite Social Security forms, and it's just Form 795, and it's literally a blank page. I just kind of screenshotted the top of it. When somebody needs to report information to Social Security and they don't really have something, an official document to report it on, I just tell them to write it down. I've had people, write statements saying, I pay for this out of pocket to my parents for rent because we don't have a rental agreement, or they didn't have a rental agreement. So we make a statement saying, I have done this and this is how I'm doing it. So worst case or last resort, just have someone write this down on this official Social Security document as proof and a reporting of some sort of resource or some sort of income. So also, like on the other side of things, it's important to report work information to Social Security. So I know that in past webinars, we've gone through what work incentives are for each different benefit program, but here are just some of the most important ones that we need to make sure people are reporting to Social Security. So if they're getting the student earned income exclusion, or if they are a student and under the age of 22, they could be eligible for the student earned income exclusion. So we need to report that. Impairment related work expenses, anything paid for out of pocket that somebody needs in order to work, that should be reported for both SSI and SSDI. Blind work expenses are a SSI only work incentive. Under SSDI, they just fall in as an IRWI, actually. And then subsidy forms. So if somebody's getting special assistance from an employer for their work, this can be a super beneficial form. And we're going to look at all of these. I have them all copied and pasted for you guys here on the next slides. I actually like this subsidy form for anyone getting benefits, and I'll go into why maybe when I bring that slide up. And then I'm sure as an SSA, you guys have seen this beautiful SSA 821 form that comes out. This form is scary for people. It's like 14 pages and they don't know what to do with it. It's a work activity report for SSDI and childhood disability benefit folks. And my policy with this form is report as much information as you can. We're going to look at that form here on a couple pages. So for the student earned income exclusion, a lot of times what you need is a letter from the school saying someone's a student. So if you guys are working with someone who's a student, if you're payee for someone who's a student, if you're just an SSA for them, make sure that they're telling Social Security that they're still a student, because it could increase their SSI benefit by a lot of money because they can exclude it as the student earned income exclusion. So here is just a sample letter that the school could write up for them. It just make sure it has the most important things: the school name, the student Social Security number, how many hours they're at school is important because that's part of the rule. You have to be a full-time student to be eligible for the SSI program, or for the student earned income exclusion through the SSI program. And then make sure they always leave like a phone number so that they know, Social Security knows who to call for this proof. But just, we could help solve a lot of issues that come up if people are reporting to Social Security that they're a student. And then also the other side of that is reporting when they stop being a student, because Social Security might not always know that. Sometimes they just assume people graduate when they turn 18. And we know that that doesn't happen. A lot of folks stay in school until age 22. So this, just a quick letter from the school can be so helpful for them to get just so they have it when we need to send it to Social Security. So this form is the subsidy form. So I like this form for anyone actually who is employed, even if they're getting SSI benefits, because someday if they're working, they might eventually get SSDI benefits. And this form could be helpful all through that application process and all through when they do eventually get those SSDI benefits. And I have found this form is actually a lot easier to do as the person is working in that job than going back. It's really hard to track down old employers to fill out this form if you need it from several years back. A lot of times a job coach, I know there's some job coaches on this call because I recognize your names, but as a job coach, get employers to fill out this form for people just to kind of show who and what kind of support they're getting. It's a pretty simple form, but basically they just need where they're working, what their job title is, how many hours a week. And then these forms, they're actually good for the lifetime of that job position. So if somebody's in the same job for 20 years and this form was filled out when they started, but if they're still in that same position, it still applies to that job position. So it's really good to get just so we have it. And if the employer won't fill it out, actually as a job coach who knows about their employment, you guys could fill it out as a last resort. This is the beautiful SSA 821, that work review report. And I just want to point out a couple spots on here that are really important and that I know that people go to their SSAs and say, I got this form, I need help. The most important thing is to pick out on pay stubs if somebody's getting vacation pay, and this is on page 5 of the document. If they're getting vacation pay, if they're getting bonuses, if they're getting paid for sick time, those don't count actually. And it's easier if we list them all down here. And then also they'll see on their pay stubs, but document that. Make sure you're writing on here. Page 6 is my favorite page because I always like to fill in all these lines in these teeny tiny little boxes. I never have enough space. I always have to like add more in the comment section, but write everything that somebody gets help with. Even if it's okay as an SSA, I'm checking on them and talking to them once a month to make sure their job is going well. That would be, it could be listed under extra help. It could be listed under other. You know, I feel like people underestimate this form, and it could be so helpful in showing that somebody's getting a special condition at their employer. Transportation is another big one that I feel like people they go through this form so quickly, but this box, given special transportation to and from work. If they're getting paid transportation from a county board, you guys can document this on here. I mean, they can document it on there. It just needs to be written on there that somebody is not driving themselves to work and that they're getting help with that. So make sure that this form, I really love to write too much information on that form. IRWEs, you'll find on this form on page 8, if they're paying anything out of pocket. And then this other page 7 is important to show like if somebody's job ended or if, you know, they got cut back hours. That's where you list that on this form as well. So these pages I think are the most important parts. And a lot of times what I see is people fill out pages like the beginning 1 through 4. But then when it gets to these forms, they kind of like lose steam and they're like, more of this. But these are the most important pages. So make sure you guys, if you're helping someone with this form, make sure you're filling out as much information as possible. So now we know like what needs to be reported. How do we report it? So you could do a couple of things. You can take information to a local Social Security office. This actually is Christine's favorite, which she's going to talk about later. We could call the local Social Security office. You could actually mail the information to the Social Security office. This, I think, is not the best. I would use it as a last resort. But sometimes they do give people prepaid envelopes to mail their pay stubs to them every month. So that might be a good way to get an individual, you know, to send in their income every month. My absolute favorite is to fax it to Social Security. So I really love faxing. I fax like probably 4 or 5 Social Security offices every single day, and they probably get sick of me. I like fax because you get to keep a copy of what you sent and you get to have proof that it was sent. And then on here, there's a link. We're not going to click on it, but you guys can go to it later to figure out where your local Social Security office is for people. So you just type in their zip codes and then it'll show them which their local office is. And then every single month, you can actually sign up on their website to get a notification saying, hey, it's time to report your pay stubs. And I really love this video that comes in these wage reporting emails. And we're actually going to take a peek at it because it's only 1 minute and 35 seconds.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Thanks. Let's see what we got. All right. Let me know, panelists, if you hear it.
And avoid processing delays by reporting wages online with a personal My Social Security account, or using our telephone wage reporting system or mobile wage reporting application. Timely reporting of wages can help prevent you from being overpaid. Who can report wages? Anyone working and receiving Social Security disability benefits, SSDI, supplemental security income, SSI, or both. Or the spouse or parent who is working and living with a person receiving SSI, representative payee for one or multiple individuals. Institutional and organizational representative payees cannot report wages online. What are the requirements to report wages? Changes in work activity must be reported promptly. SSI recipients should report wages by the 6th day of each month. SSI recipients can only report wages for the prior month. SSDI beneficiaries are not required to report wages by the 6th day of the month, but should report promptly. SSDI beneficiaries can report wages at any time during the month for the current month and up to 24 prior months. Only SSI recipients can use telephone or mobile wage reporting. To see how to report wages online, watch our video at youtube.com/Social Security. To get started, log in or create a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount, or download our mobile wage reporting app, or speak with a representative for information about the SSI telephone wage report system. You can save time and avoid.
Whoops. All right. Let me stop sharing. We'll go back to Paula.
Perfect. Thank you. So I will say that I have seen people run into issues with using the app and the online wage reporting if Social Security doesn't actually list their employer in the system. So the way to fix this would be call the local office and say, I need you guys to list my employer in the system. And usually what they need is the EIN number for the employer. So this will be found sometimes on the pay stub or sometimes on their W-2. It absolutely should be on the W-2, but sometimes it's on the pay stub. So you can't report those wages online or in their app without that in the system. So that's, I guess, an important thing to note. If you're working with someone and they said, oh, I can't do it that way, it's probably because Social Security doesn't have that information in their system. So on the screen here, there's a little QR code. That's actually a link to download the app, the SSI wage reporting app. So it's I've heard of many people successfully doing the app. It's a great way to get things in. And again, you know, when you're on SSI, that income needs to be reported by the 6th of the month to ensure that those SSI payments are as accurate as possible. So if they miss that 6th of the month deadline, still report because it could get adjusted. But just once they get them in, if they're getting them in a timely manner, then that'll definitely help. I did see a quick question in the chat. I don't know if it was answered in the Q&A, but it said, you know, we said that you have 10 days to report a change, and then that's if something changes. So if you move, you have 10 days to report it. If you start a new job, you have 10 days to report it. That's the initial way to report things. And then every month, things for income need to be reported by the 6th, just to kind of clarify that. But so that's the Social Security land of things. We're going to pass it over to Latosha. She's going to teach you all about Job and Family Services.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Paula, for all that great information you shared regarding Social Security. We're now going to switch gears and talk about some benefits managed through Job and Family Services that some individuals may receive, where reporting changes are very important to maintaining benefits. So we have Medicaid. There's several different types of Medicaid that individuals may receive through Medicaid. And 1 second, my screen just went crazy. Sorry about that. So there's various types of Medicaid that has different income and resource limits. There's Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamp benefits, and that benefit is based on household size and also income below 130% of the federal poverty guidelines. There's the Medicare Premium Assistance Program. Medicaid helps pay for out-of-pocket costs associated with Medicare, such as the Medicare premiums that individuals are required to pay through their Social Security benefits. There's the QMB, the FLMB, and then the QI. Some of the reporting requirements for JFS we're going to discuss. It's very important for you to reach out to your local Job and Family Services to find out what their reporting requirements are, because I feel like they're a little different for each office. There's a link here that you can click on and to find your local Job and Family Services office. The reporting requirements for Job and Family Services, the individual is required to report the information or the authorized representative. Technically, if the individual does not have an authorized representative and they need some support reporting information, they can definitely get assistance from anyone with reporting that information, but you really should have that individual, sign a release of information to do so. But technically, it is the individual or the authorized representative responsibility to report those changes. Each county may have different forms that they require individuals to use to report information. I do know here in Warren County, there is an employment verification form that individuals are required to use when they stop or start a new job. I find several times that individuals are not aware that they should be reporting this change to Job and Family Services. And when they do a renew with Job and Family Services, if there's a change in employment, at that time, Job and Family Services will request that that individual get that employment verification form filled out. So to save some time, if an individual could get that information completed prior to that renewal, that would be great. So as soon as they know that they're going to start a new job or stop employment somewhere, go ahead and encourage that individual to get that employment verification filled out if that local Job and Family Services office required that employment verification form to be completed. If individuals need help with obtaining verifications, a caseworker through JFS can assist them with that, but often they would need authorization to do so. Here's a great online portal for Job and Family Services where individuals can self-report information. They can create an account online. Here is some of the information listed that they're going to request, like your first name, last name. You have to create a password and username. This link here will take you directly to the portal to log in or create an account. Medicaid income and resource verification. Some of the information Medicaid would request or Job and Family Services will be income, proof of Social Security benefits, proof of unearned income. For example, last 6 weeks of pay stub information. The resources are the same as SSI is what counts. So everything that Paula went over regarding what counts as resources for SSI will be the same for Medicaid as well. They will request most recent bank statements, and also they would need proof of stable accounts as well. SNAP benefits. This benefit is based on a household size and household income. That's how they determine the amount an individual will receive. Deductions are applied for rental expenses and utilities expenses, so it's very important for individuals to report that information. Provide Medicaid or Job and Family Services with a copy of the rental agreement and copies of utility bills so that they can take all that in consideration when they're determining the SNAP benefit eligibility and the amount. There's a 20% earned income deduction, And every 6 months, they're going to do an interim report to see if the individual is still eligible for that benefit and the amount that they will receive. Most changes should be reported within 10 days. There is a nice change report that's going to be followed up on this next slide that individual can use to report changes to SNAP, but they can also just notify JFS directly of any changes as well if they don't have this form available to them. They usually send this form out when they're providing individuals with their eligibility for SNAP benefits. It's usually, I think it's like on the last page or so. So some individuals may not be aware this is a way that you can report information. It provides, you're fine, Paula, you can go to the next. So now we're going to discuss housing and rental assistance reporting. It's very important to report changes in employment, income, and family sizes within 10 business days. I have seen in situations where individuals will forget to report their employment or decrease or increase in income to housing, and they end up in a situation where they're paying more than what they should be paying for rent, or they're paying less than what they should be paying, and then they're in a situation where they're required to pay back money to the housing authority that they're receiving a rental assistance from. So it's very important to let individuals know that they report any changes in their income, any changes in their employment within that 10 business days. Report any information that's requested by the housing authority. Provide notification of intent to move or relocate, so the individual know what steps they need to take to get their voucher transferred over to a different county or a different state, whatever that case may be, for their intent to move or relocate. They should also notify the housing authority if their landlord is requesting them to pay more than their established rent. I haven't came across this situation. I hope I never would, but just in case, I want to make sure individuals are aware that they should notify the housing authority in the event their landlord is asking them to pay more than they're supposed to pay. Also, the individual should notify the housing authority if the landlord is failing to make any repairs in a timely manner, because they should be living in a safe living environment. To confirm your reporting requirements and how to report changes, I always recommend contact your local housing authority, because it could be a little bit different in each county. And here is a link that individuals can click on to find where their local housing authority is located. Now I'm going to pass it over to Christine so she can discuss some things that she wants to share and highlight some things based on her experience as well.
Thank you. So, the thing is that I really make sure that it's important to highlight your actual hours worked, because the thing is, like sick time, paid vacation is not counted, even if you have your hours altogether at, I'm making up a number, 20 a week, and you only worked 10 and a half out of 20 because you took sick time or paid vacation the rest. You highlight where it says regular, because then they can only count that in the calculator. Because sometimes the other thing to do is, if you do the amount and then to minus your subsidy, if you have a subsidy, you're doing the math for the Social Security Administration for them. So then it's a way to prove your details. And when taking the information to the Social Security office, trying to get a signature of the person that you are giving the information to, and always make double copies to keep one for you and give one to them. I've had experience before where I went through like 9 months of reporting things, and then they almost came at me saying I owed over $10,000, and they did all the things incorrectly because I had the sheets with earwees and everything taken out, did all of it, but they lost all that paperwork. So it's important to have your signatures and tell the staff to write clearly, not in cursive, so you can read their name, because then that puts liability on the staff, because then they are the ones at fault, not you. Just to point it out, because the stronger you have in details, more backup you will have.
Thank you, Christine. And Lisa, I forgot to tell you to share my video.
Oh, that's okay. You want me to still do it?
Yeah, if we have time. It's just
Yeah.
a short video showing how individuals can report changes through that online portal with Job and Family Services.
All right, here we go.
This video will demonstrate a walkthrough on how to report changes in the self-service portal. Disclaimer. For this video, we will be demonstrating how to report changes in the Ohio Benefits self-service portal training environment. Some elements may differ than what customers will see when they apply. Note that customers will apply for benefits at ssp.benefits.ohio.gov. This is the SSP homepage or landing page. You will click the Access My Benefits tile on the lower right-hand side. Click Report a Change to My Case from the drop-down. A few examples of a change that could be reported are changes in employment, income, or your expenses. If you have any questions on navigating or using the SSP, please call 1-844-640-OHIO 6446.
Thank you, Lisa.
Absolutely. All right. Are we good? You guys are like, there's so much information and so many great questions. I wasn't sure. Okay, there we go.
Yep. So this is the last screen that I had before our quiz questions. I just wanted to make sure you guys had the links to all this stuff we've talked about. So here you'll find a link to the Social Security forms. There you'll find all the forms we went through. I always recommend getting them actually directly from the Social Security website because they do update them every now and then. So that's where you're going to go to find those. To sign up for the emails, you can send that link to folks and then that video. If you're really, really bored, you can go to the Social Security handbook and read all of their fun rules and Job and Family Services, Medicaid, food stamp rules. And then here are the links to find your local offices at the bottom and that Social Security office locator as well. So
more binge watching, but this is binge, online, Friday night, beverage of choice. Check it all out, right?
So much fun.
Much fun.
I just love how many favorite forms you have, Paula. I'm just curious if you did go through that handbook, if you would find some new favorite forms.
I might. Maybe I'll do that this Friday. It'll be good times.
I'm going to party with Paula. That's a whole new thing. All right, I'm going to launch the poll and Paula's going to talk you through it.
Yep. So the first question is the following income needs to be reported to Social Security if receiving SSI benefits. So what do we think? Lottery winnings is A, B is employment wages, C, monetary gifts, D, all of the above, or E, none of the above.
You can keep going. I put them all in one, so.
Look at that. Oh, did you? They're all.
Yeah, so just keep going and we'll check all the answers, how they did at the end.
Okay. Sounds good. Number 2, if receiving benefits, hold on, I can't see the top. This thing is in my way.
Sorry.
If receiving benefits, I always need to tell Social Security and Job and Family Services if I move residence or change my phone number, true or false. And then an individual starts working. They have Medicaid coverage, SSI, SNAP benefits, and rental assistance. Who should they tell about their employment? We got A, JFS, B, Housing Authority, C, Social Security, D, Representative Payee, E, which is A and C, or F, all of the above.
I hate those tests that have A and C and D, E, and B, but not G. Like
So
oh.
many options. You start
They're
to
trying to trick
second
you
guess
guys.
yourself, right?
You
You start
do.
second guessing yourself.
Right.
Like, always go with your gut.
Always. Who is responsible for reporting changes to JFS? Is it my parents, an individual, authorized representative, or D, which is B and or C? And then the last one, who's responsible for reporting changes to Social Security? A, employer, B, individual, C, SSA, and that's Service and Support Administrator, you folks out there, not the Social Security Administration. D, representative payee, or E, which is B and or D. So that is our 5-question quiz.
All right, we're at 75% of the people are done, so I'm just going to give it another second. There's still answers coming in. I don't want anybody's to be, I don't know.
Super
We'll see how they
stressful.
did. Yeah,
know.
it is very stressful. I feel like I need a little drum roll. All right, I'm going to go ahead. They still are coming in. I was going to say I'm at 82%. That's pretty good. A lot of you guys took the quiz. Way to go. Thank you. All right, I'm going
I
to go
think
ahead.
everyone is going to do a great job on the
They
quiz.
are. They are. All right. So I'm going to share the results. Here we go. And there we go. Well, so for question number 1, the following income needs are reported to Social Security if receiving SSI benefits. The correct answer was all of the above, and 98% of you got it right. Way to go. Give yourselves
Yay.
a tap on the back. Number 2, if receiving benefits, I always need to tell Social Security and JFS if I move residences or change my phone number. Look at 100% true. You did well. Way to go. All right. Number 3, an individual starts working. They have Medicaid coverage, SSI, SNAP benefits, and rental assistance. Who should be notified of their employment? And we have F was the correct answer. All of the above. Wow, we got to tell a lot of people about that stuff. And we got 78% of you guessed that one right. Good job. Or knew that one, I should say. You didn't guess, you knew it. All right. Who is responsible for reporting changes to JFS? The answer is B and or C, and we got 94% of you got that one correct. Way to go. And who is responsible for reporting changes to Social Security? Again, we've got a few people opted for B, a few people for D, but mostly it is B and or D, and that is the correct answer. 96% of you got it right. That is perfect. I guess I was supposed to show correct answers to all, and I didn't do that, but I told you them. So, all right, stop sharing. There we go. Okay, well, listen, you guys did great. I know we have a few questions that you guys might want to answer, and we have a few minutes. If you you'll notice in the answered column of Q&A that our wonderful panelists tried to answer the questions, and you guys gave so many great questions that I had them busy constantly. But if these are specifically, I don't know if any of the panelists want to turn their cameras on, if you want to bring up these last questions that for some reason nobody the answer. So Paula, you want to take out a little more on the holding out topic that you brought up?
Yes. So, Julie, this policy actually applies in all states because Social Security is a federal program. So it is nationwide. So yes, even if your state does not have common law marriage, the actual Social Security representative, they're the ones that could potentially decide if that holding out policy applies. I will say, like, I have not really seen it apply in any situations, but I think it's just good for people as common practice to be careful how they're presenting themselves because it could happen. Very well could happen.
Yes,
Awesome.
especially for individuals that may share that they are married, but technically they're not. So just be mindful, because I know we have some individuals who are considering it, but making sure they're not sharing that they are when they're currently are not married. Because you never know when you might get that random call from Social Security where they're wanting to update your information, and the individual may not have a advocate with them or a support person with them when they're asking those questions. And at that time, they may slip up and say the wrong thing and not realize that they're jeopardizing their benefits at that time.
Also, to add a comment.
I got invited to a wedding in Franklin County of somebody who is receiving services and Social Security. So if you're here from Franklin County, contact me. Let's make sure they know what's going on.
And it's a common misconception I hear all the time. I'm on Social Security, I can't get married. And that's like a whole nother topic for a whole nother day, because it is possible. But I think the most important thing is to make sure you tell Social Security if you did get married, because I've actually worked a couple cases up here in Erie County where the folks did that. They went into Social Security. They said, I need a new Social Security card. My name changed. I got married. I get SSI. They did all the right things, but the representative didn't change their benefit for like 2 years. And so that overpayment, we were actually able to get waived because the individual was able to prove they weren't at fault. They did what they were supposed to do. So it is possible. It's just you will get less money. And hopefully those workers are doing what they're supposed to do.
Can I say something that Tanya always said?
Sure.
And that is doing the roommate agreement type where you're not legally counted married, you're more in the nickname roommate, makes it so then Social Security can't say you guys are married because you do the roommate agreement. And that's something she was saying that we've done, she says, to some people.
It's true. You could be roommates. Just if you're legally married, that rule still would apply. You can't really be roommates if you're legally married.
Yes.
But yes, you're right. If you're living with somebody and you can just sign a roommate agreement, and that hopefully would solve and prevent that issue from happening.
But even if they are living in 2 separate bedrooms, okay, then that proves it's roommate, not
Christine's taking us down the road. Now we're going to start people's sleeping patterns. It's all right. And sleeping partners, I should say. Hey, while we're on this topic, somebody just put in the Q&A, what is the SSA's responsibility if a person receiving benefits chooses not to report? What's you guys' take on that?
So as an SSA, it is not your responsibility to report. I would just encourage them to report. And like I said, it could actually be in the individual's favor in some situations to report information, just because it could prevent issues down the road. If you're telling Social Security everything, then you can't potentially be found at fault if something might go awry. Like Christine said, just getting that proof sometimes helps get out of situations. So as an SSA, I would just encourage them to share all of that information because it could actually work in their benefit in the future. And it is their job. And now if they have a representative payee, ultimately it is that payee's responsibility because the payee exists for a reason. So,
and to add to what Paula shared, if the individual is not reporting and they're choosing not to, explain the consequences of not reporting so they're aware of, the actions that they're, taking if they're not going to report, that it could end up in an overpayment or a loss of benefits if they choose not to report information.
All right. Let's go to if an individual is in a vocational program and is earning some income, then should they have the work questionnaire filled out?
So that the work activity report, I believe, is what you're referring to, that SSA 821. It does come in the mail for people getting those SSDI benefits. And yes, if somebody's in a workshop, that report needs to be filled out. It should be filled out anytime somebody gets it in the mail from Social Security. So the most important thing would be to make sure on that report to note it is a workshop and sheltered employment, if it is actually that, because that is in itself a special condition. And so Social Security actually would be not counting all of their wages for that purpose.
I think they were meaning, though, if they're in a vocational rehab program or something, or job training for X time period, then should they report those, and how would they count that? I think that's more what they were talking about.
If they were referring to the subsidy form, then that would be not something that needs to be done in a workshop or sheltered employment. That is for community employment, that subsidy form.
Or unless it's a I know some individuals might be in a vocational rehab where they are in a non-paid position or non-paid training. So yeah, that wouldn't be required. But if they're in a paid position, do that voc rehab, it would be a good idea to report that information, as Paula indicated, indicating that there's job coaching, what type of supervision they have within that site.
Okay, listen, we still have questions in the chat box, and I want to be respectful of time. So I don't know what I'm going to do with those questions, to be quite honest. I might have my panelists, if anybody can maybe like screenshot them and save them, and there's an easy answer, happy to add some of that to the back of one of our PowerPoints, or you can reach out directly. A lot of our panelists are more than happy to. Why don't you put that panelists that if you're comfortable putting your email in the chat box and you have a specific question or to answer, feel free to put that. That would be the easiest thing. But I do want to go ahead, Anne, and let's finish up for today. And I don't know if anybody has time. I know I have to get off pretty quickly, but I'm not sure about other people. Look at Elizabeth put hers in there. Thank you, Elizabeth. She put them in the chat box. You can reach out to her with some questions. All right, we got one more poll.
Yep. Let's launch.
We're gonna go ahead.
We've got poll number 3, looking at what comes next. So we're asking you, what do you want support on? Medicaid buy-in for workers with disabilities updates, work incentives for older adults, how will work impact housing, transportation, and food assistance benefits, or make sense of all the resources. Or perhaps you have a whole other idea that's not listed here, which you would be welcome to check that one and then share in the chat box.
All right, I'm just going to give it a few more seconds while people are voting, just so you guys know, because I know we're at the end of our time. We're getting a lot of shares out for Medicaid buy-in, and just keep it simple, make sense of all these wonderful resources. And then, of course, in third place is that how does work impact housing, transportation, and food assistance? So we are certainly looking forward to, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll because we're at 70%. Share the results out. There you go. We definitely will continue to look at Medicaid buy-in. And I love the fact that you like us to keep it simple and make sense of everything also. We do have our next episode scheduled. It is not on OACB's Member Connect yet, but it will be soon, and that is going to be on June 4th. I believe it will be in the afternoon with Nate Turner from the Ohio Department of DD and with Margaret Dramzik from Lucas County Board of DD. So we'll be doing stable on June 4th from 2 to 3:30. I saw some of the questions asked were about stable. Feel free to come back and learn all about the stable, everything you ever wanted or didn't want to know about stable. So, all right. We did questions. Thank you big time to our panelists. I appreciate everybody for being here. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And